What is going on, everybody, and welcome in to episode 9 of Real Friends, the first episode of the new year, and I'm extremely excited. I'm your host, T-Bob Hebert. To my right, I have Miss Rivers Hughey. Further to my right, I have Klaus. Nathan Velasquez. As today, you might have guessed from Nathan's excellent wardrobe, we are celebrating Wes Anderson films. A great episode planned for you today. We're going to talk about Rushmore. We're going to talk about Life Aquatic. And then we're going to talk about the Grand Budapest Hotel. 3 different Wes Anderson films at different moments in his career. I had never seen any of these. I absolutely love them. I can't wait to talk about them. But before we dive into Wes Anderson, let's start, as we always do here on Real Friends, and kind of break down what we've been watching lately. Klaus, I will throw it to you first. What have you been watching on the television recently?
Well, I don't think I'm going to. There are only few lines from the movie that I can quote well in the accent. I saw The Darkest Hour recently, the Winston Churchill movie. Where Gary Oldman is Winston Churchill. It's I was kind of concerned before going to see it that Gary Oldman might
Gary Oldman a little skinny for Winston Churchill?
No, that's fat suit and everything.
Oh, okay.
He really, by the middle of the movie.
It'd be easier to find someone who's fat.
I mean, maybe so.
But I don't know, because Gary Oldman, you completely forget after about 5 minutes of him being on screen that it's Gary Oldman.
Wow.
He completely loses himself in the performance. And it's not, I thought the story mattered because it kind of takes place before World War II has become World War II.
Yeah.
And they kind of just look at right when he became the prime minister. And it's a very interesting look at a very small amount of time.
I'm guessing from the title does that relate to that famous speech that he talks about?
Yeah.
Where he's like, "This is our darkest hour."
Right. That's kind of what the movie builds up to, is that point. But it's absolutely incredible. I've seen it twice now.
So you'd recommend it?
Oh yeah.
All right,
it's probably going to be a big Oscar contender.
Rivers, you see anything? Anything else before we move on from you?
No. Well, I saw All the Money in the World. Kind of boring. A little bit boring.
That had some high ratings. I thought that was burning up the Oscar buzz.
I thought it was. It's probably going to be up for some Oscars.
Do you live and die by the ratings? I feel like you would be one of those guys.
No, but I think, but I'm also not one of those people where it's like ratings don't mean anything. No, if something gets a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, there's a very good chance you're going to like that movie a lot.
Yeah. And no, I went into it. I was very excited about it. I was excited with that whole controversy of having to take Kevin Spacey out. Yeah. But I actually fell asleep for 10 minutes. So I do need to go back and see it again. But
you fell asleep. I don't feel good about my chances.
Yeah. I mean, and look, sometimes you just go in a movie tired and it's not even a knock on the movie. Like I did that
like you did with
Jedi
Star Wars?
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, that was weird.
And didn't you fall asleep during Halloween Town? Didn't you tell a story about
I've fallen asleep during a lot of movies that I really love.
I had to rewatch Halloween Town because
I don't know if you need to. I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and say...
I'm just thinking of examples of times you both fall asleep.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say nobody really needs to watch Halloween Town. If you want to, yeah, sure. It's a fun movie, I suppose. Rivers, you been watching anything lately?
Still watching New Girl. I've started doing this thing. I'm very particular about how I watch these. I can't start a television show and then not finish it. I can't just casually watch one and then
OCD?
Yeah, a little bit. But I do want to watch the new Dave Chappelle special on Netflix.
I'm excited.
Is it good?
No, I did not see it.
Oh, you didn't?
I saw it pop up on my feed yesterday when I was
out last week.
Marathoning 6 hours of Wes Anderson, and it looks pretty excellent.
I'm excited about that.
I mean, Dave Chappelle was so landmark for our age.
Mm-hmm.
Like Nathan, you were probably. I was on the verge of being too young for Chappelle at times. I feel like I need to rewatch Chappelle now that I'm actually out of high school.
I've seen him twice in New Orleans, and he's once it was him, and he was so great. And then I went and saw Chris Rock last year, and he surprise opened.
I remember reading a news story about that.
Yeah, it was so crazy. The lights went down, and all of a sudden you see this bald head, and I'm like, that's not Chris Rock. And then I was like, no way.
That's insane, dude. It's the craziest thing about Dave Chappelle is just the story where at the top of his game, I mean, I'll never forget it. He just completely disappeared.
Off the face and then he came back as swole Dave Chappelle.
He's so jacked.
And he used to be so tiny and that was kind of what made part of what made Dave Chappelle. And now it's hard for my mind to wrap itself around new jacked.
No, it's the pure Carrot Top thing. I wonder if he's doing any tea. Maybe so. For me lately, thanks for asking. What I've been watching is the new season of Black Mirror. I know me and Nathan both binged it.
It's good. Yeah, that was how long was it until you'd finished the entire season?
Oh, me and the wife did in a day, or maybe 2. I want to say we were ecstatic when we figured out last Friday that it was out, or last Saturday, whenever. And so, yeah, that's how we spent a lot of New Year's weekend. Actually, the holiday weekend was just watching Black Mirror, which is a depressing way to head into the future because Black Mirror tends to be very dark as far as the future is concerned. I will say this, the first episode of this new season, it's like an hour, 20 minutes long, so it's almost like a movie in and of itself. It is one of the best things I've ever watched. I absolutely loved it. Other things, a movie that I absolutely fell in love with as well, Shape of Water. Guillermo del Toro, one of my favorite directors, knocks it out in the park again, back to his old form. It is a story that is completely original, yet kind of like familiar because it is just a love story. It's just a love story in one of the most unique settings that I think you could imagine. Nathan, you've seen it as well, right?
I don't know why. For some reason, the first time I saw it, I admired it a lot, but I didn't really get swept up in the love story. But the second time, it did. It completely did it for me. Within the first, like, whenever it opens and you're, like, underwater and it goes into her apartment, it's incredibly transfixing.
Yeah, and really, that's the whole movie aesthetically and the music in it. I mean, for me, it's probably my music of the year as far as a movie goes. It's the only soundtrack this year where pretty much on repeat, I've been listening to that soundtrack constantly since the movie ended. It's got this great kind of French sort of feeling. Alexander Desplat. No, I'm screwing up the name. It's a French pronunciation, but he's done some other great movie songs through the years that I've liked. But
Grand Budapest.
Wait, is he the Grand Budapest guy? Okay, it's a little tie into this episode. I did not know. I love him.
Yeah,
he's excellent. The movie's excellent. Guillermo del Toro, though, he has a thing with interspecial relationships. He tried to make the movie Splice a few years back. That was pretty bad. Did he try to make that? Or didn't he make that?
Well, maybe he was a producer on that. I don't know.
I'd have to double check. I was under the impression that he directed that when I saw it in theaters, and it was not very good.
Yeah, he kind of he'll go into some pretty strange areas. I thought it worked very well.
It worked incredibly well in this one. It's super heartfelt. It's a great movie. It's got that great fairy tale type of Pan's Labyrinth feel. I can't recommend Shape of Water enough. One of my favorite movies that I've seen all year long.
All year?
Yeah. Well, okay, I guess it's 2018. I saw this movie, though, in 2017.
So is it your favorite of 2017 or of 2018?
I mean, I guess it's weird. Okay, no, Guillermo del Toro did not direct Splice. He produced it. So good call, Nathan. I don't know if it's my favorite movie. We should do that, actually.
Pan's Labyrinth. There's nothing for me that beats Pan. Are you talking in terms of
I'm thinking 2017 favorite movies.
2017, of course.
In terms of Del Toro favorite movies, it's between this and Pan's Labyrinth, and I'm not sure exactly where I fall. I think I'm leaning Shape of Water.
Oh, really?
Honestly, yeah. I was very touched by it.
Pan's Labyrinth has my heart.
That is a true modern day fairy tale classic. All right, so without further ado,
you guys are so cute talking about fairy tales.
let's dive into...
It's a dark fairy tale. It's a guy fairy tale.
Well, it's like a Brothers Grimm. Well, okay, not to go on a fairy tale tangent here, but it is more in line with what traditional fairy tales are, which are like very violent, kind of crazy, kind of like lessons that are supposed to teach kids not to do something that their parents kind of don't want them to do. All right, though, let's dive into Wes Anderson. Obviously, just for some backstory, Nathan, you are a massive Wes Anderson fan. Rivers, you dress up as Wes Anderson characters every Halloween. I had never seen, I really, the only Wes Anderson movie I had experienced was going into this was Fantastic Mr. Fox. And it's probably my favorite animated movie of all time. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed myself watching all of these.
Well, you dress up every year for it. Who is?
I do. I was actually
who's like your favorite person.
I was Max Fisher 2 years ago, and then the year before that, I was Margot Tenenbaum. That was, fun. But I feel like
I got to see the Tenenbaums. I got to see Darjeeling.
And my husband dressed up as what's his face? Tenenbaum.
Oh, Richie.
Richie. Yeah. The brother and sister that fall in love.
Oh, wow.
Not to ruin that for you.
I need to see the Tenenbaums.
Adopted.
You know how into incest I am.
Yes,
it's fine.
Very big. Well, everybody is nowadays. It's fine. Nathan, so we'll start as we do every episode of Real Friends. We'll start going chronological order. So we'll go Rushmore, Life Aquatic, Grand Budapest. Nathan, give us some background information on Rushmore.
Yeah, so Rushmore, this is actually Wes Anderson's second movie. It was written by him and his friend Owen Wilson.
How about that? I was surprised to see Owen Wilson at the end on the main writing credit.
They're like real good friends.
Yeah. Owen Wilson with the Royal Tenenbaums writing credit, he's nominated for an Oscar for Best Writer. So
Didn't they go to college together just really quick?
Yeah, they met in like a screenwriting class.
Yeah.
The thing about Owen Wilson is he's one of those guys that I think he gets a reputation as being like I don't want to say
California
dumb,
dude.
yes, but being like the stoner California. So I love when you see those guys transcend into the writing room, prove that they're much more than that. It's like, however, for whatever reason, even though Ben Affleck burst onto the scene with Good Will Hunting back in the day, he got that reputation, and then he goes on to win Best Director eventually. So yeah, shout out to Owen Wilson.
Well, Rushmore, it's a coming-of-age story about a young man named Max Fisher who is completely dedicated to his prep school, Rushmore. But the thing is, he's not dedicated to it in a scholarly way. He's like the king of the extracurricular activities. So he has started dozens and dozens of clubs, but his grades are terrible. So he gets put on academic probation.
Sudden death probation.
Yes, that's right. Sudden death probation. And shortly after, no, it's right before he gets put on, I think it's before, he hears a speech from a man named Bloom, who is played brilliantly by Bill Murray.
Yeah.
And then he kind of has, it touches him, the speech that he gives, and he becomes friends with the Bill Murray character. And then shortly after that, he falls in love with the first grade teacher, Rosemary.
Yep.
And slowly, Bill Murray starts to fall in love as well. And there are these two warring. Max Fisher, obviously, way too young. Bill Murray.
He's 15 years old, just for context.
Yeah, like very illegally young. And Bloom also starts to fall in love with her. And then these two friends start fighting over this woman. And the woman, Rosemary, also, her husband died recently going through her own. So it's a love triangle going on, kind of. A weird love triangle.
So that's
Weird
the best
love
part.
triangle,
Is
yeah.
that
a lot
it
of
is,
twists and turns.
It's kind of almost like how I was talking about Shape of Water in that, okay, we're used to stories involving love triangles. We're not used to one where one of the players is 15 years old, and really the woman is showing no interest, but just out of like sheer force of will, he kind of creates this love triangle.
That's one of my favorite things about this movie is that thinking back on it, it feels playful, and it is very playful, but it gets kind of
dark.
It does. It gets very
aggressive.
dark, and
Cutting the
while
brakes.
you know that they're not actually going to really do anything illegal, you don't think they are. They get pretty close to it being awkward.
He
their
almost
situation.
pulls off a kiss when he shows up with the fake blood in the in the room. I was impressed, and that's something that I think highlights Max Fisher's character throughout this movie, which is that he is sheer force of will. Like he almost bends reality around him with his manipulation, with his skills in speaking with people, dealing with people, getting people, selling them on his ideas, but unfortunately can't translate that to school or whatever. So we'll kind of stick with our pros and cons type of setup that we did. I'll start with you, Nathan. What was something that you really loved about Rushmore?
Well, I liked how you might know some people in your life, like one person that's kind of like Max, but it's kind of a rare characterization. And I thought that the characters are incredibly relatable because I kind of thought that Max is like the fearless side that we all want to be. Bloom is kind of the person that we're all afraid that we're going to be, rich and deeply unhappy.
Yeah.
But Bill Murray pulls it off wonderfully. It seems like everything bad that gets thrown his way, he just accepts it with this charm that makes it funny.
This Bill Murray-ness.
Oh yeah, it's wonderful. Just the way that he mopes around about everything, and and Rosemary, I absolutely love. I've fell in love with Rosemary the first time I saw this.
She's great.
She is.
Now you mentioned Max Fisher. How we all know somebody like that. For me, that was my older sister Cammie, who's now gone on. She's like very successful. She's a badass. But like in high school, she had that ability to warp everybody to her side. Like it was almost like she had a gravitational pull where everybody else is they're just orbiting around her. And that's actually something that, as we'll discuss throughout the rest of these movies, to me was kind of a through line through all these Wes Anderson films, is the central characters are magnetic. And everything in these movies seems to kind of revolve around these larger than life personalities. And in this movie, it just happens to be a 15-year-old in Max Fisher. Now I have a question for you two, because this movie opens with a daydream, and it's along the lines of the same daydreams that I'm sure we've all had, right? I've had daydreams of like busting out like a sick guitar solo in front of the high school and everybody being like, whoa, that dude can shred. That was like one of my go-to daydreams back in high school. His is solving a math problem, an impossible one in front of everyone and getting all this applause. The end of this movie almost feels like a daydream to me, where for all the bad, he ends up putting on this incredible play and everybody comes together and every thread is tied off and everybody's happy.
Every
and everything,
single thread.
And everything ends well. Do y'all think, is Wes Anderson Did Max Fisher really pull this off, or do you think that there could be or is there a possibility that this is a little bit in his head how this movie wraps up?
I think he did it.
You think?
I mean, in the world of Wes Anderson, yeah.
No,
I think
he did it. One thing I love about Wes Anderson's style is that every movie feels kind of like you're viewing the world through the eyes of a child.
Yes.
And I think
it's very whimsical.
I think that's exactly how this feels.
Well, maybe not even through the eyes of the child, but it does feel like you're viewing it through the eyes of the
the imagination
of the main character. Yes,
yeah.
or like, and we all kind of distort reality in our own ways. I think just naturally with our own everyday experiences. So I don't think that's a negative. But I did find it interesting how Fisher really pulls everything together at the end of this movie. And I can't help but wonder if this is somewhat of how Wes Anderson maybe felt growing up. He's obviously so creative. I don't know if he wrote plays when he was younger, but he's gone on to be such a successful director. Like, I can't help but wonder if maybe he felt out of place as a 15-year-old where everybody else is worried about all these other things and he just wanted to make plays, make movies in a creative. Maybe he felt out of place at times, and this is almost like him honoring that. And I should say, I'm assuming all this. Like, I don't know any of this. It's just the feelings that I got watching it. If this is almost like his own fantasy for what could have been in a situation with a kid like that in high school. Rivers, did you have anything that stood out to you about Rushmore?
Yes. I mean, I love this movie. This is one of my favorite movies that Wes Anderson has done. The thing I like the most about it, and this is going to be very personal preference, but my aesthetic is very like 90s.
Yeah. And this was 99, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even though it was 99.
98.
Even though it was 98, it still felt very like mid 90s, like the way they dressed and even the way it looked. Yeah. It looked like every girl on my Instagram feed looks right now. That's what everyone looks like, especially Rosemary. Like that, I own those clothes. Like that has come, and that's how fashion is. It goes all, it's a round circle. But so I love that. I love the look of the and the feel of the movie. So I really like Max in that I relate to him, and not so much in the way that you described as someone who everyone gravitates around, but as this person who's obviously very brilliant. I mean, he can put his mind to anything and get it done, and it's funny, they show him doing so poorly on all of his tests in school, and then he decides that he's going to build this aquarium or whatever. He's going to get this thing built, and he's like in the room, like studying, like he knows everything about aquariums now. Yeah. He knows all the fit. I mean, so it's like not that he can't do it. It's that he doesn't really, he
doesn't choose to.
He doesn't want to.
Yeah.
And I very much relate to that. I mean, that's kind of how it was in school.
And that's how I kind of think of, that's why I go to the Wes Anderson thing where I wonder how much of this he feels like he's writing about his own experiences. Because if you're as creative of a mind as Wes Anderson is, I could imagine that school would have been like wholly boring.
Well,
so boring.
I know he didn't have any background in theater. And he actually he was studying wanting to be an architect until he got to college, which I think kind of makes sense.
Yeah, especially with his films, yeah.
That he kind of, when he got to college was when he was like probably going to do film instead.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah.
Well, and it's like one of those things where your parents are like, oh, you just got to apply yourself. You know, like that kind of, I got that speech a lot, like, oh, you can do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I didn't want to do it. I wanted to do like other stuff.
Yeah, you wanted to do clubs and beekeeping and everything else that Max Fisher does.
Something I really liked about the Max Fisher character as well is that you feel like he's got it all figured out. And I mean, even Bloom is kind of like, what's the secret?
What's
How
the
do you
deal?
seem like you've got it all figured out? And another thing that I think most people could relate to is that he's at an age where he understands love and he sees love and he thinks he feels it, but he doesn't get it.
Yes.
And that's kind of that. And he goes for it like he goes for everything else, and he like hits a brick wall. Like, you're 15 years old. We can't be in love.
Well, and speaking
you don't love me.
Speaking of characters that everybody knows, I think we've all talked to teenagers who are so cocksure of themselves that they just have the world figured out. And Max throughout the movie does this thing where he doesn't realize how full of shit he sounds, right? Like, he thinks he's exactly right, and it's also obvious, and he sounds so smart, and these adults must be so impressed with how mature I am. And he's like, no, Max, you just sound like an immature little kid.
Oh,
like, you sound like an idiot right
isn't
now.
There a point wherever he like pulls out a cigarette or like the dinner scene wherever he's like trying to start a fight, and stand up to this guy who's taking his woman, and it just looks like, I know I have those times if I think back to things that I did when I was 15.
Yeah.
It's
Like those cringy moments where you're like, I can't believe I said that
you
in
thought
public.
you had complete control of the room, and you were just making a fool of yourself.
Yeah, and I love that that's kind of all kicked off because, once again, he's 15, so he shouldn't be drinking. He gets a glass of whiskey, and, of course, everything goes off the rails. And then I think Max's journey in this movie I really liked. He goes through a pretty dark period here, and he honestly becomes a little creepy. Like, he's on the verge of like child murder when he's cutting the brakes and everything of Bloom. But then in the end, he has that redemptive arc, which I like. I like a happy ending, and it really appealed to me how you found Max finally stop putting on airs, start accepting who he was. Like, I thought it was very powerful when he spends the first half of his movie lying about who his father is, trying to keep up with the Joneses at Rushmore, saying that his father's a neurosurgeon, this and that. And then by the end of that movie, not only is he introducing his dad, but he seems very proud and happy to tell his people that, my dad's just a barber, but he's a very good man. He's a barber. I also love
and he
how
gets his own
supportive his
girlfriend.
dad is.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
Now, maybe to a fault,
I love when you realize who
maybe
his
to a
dad is.
fault.
He's like getting that haircut, and you would have never been like, oh, that's probably his dad.
Oh, see, interestingly, I kind of I don't know why. I got the feeling that was his dad off the bat. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure why. But yeah, so it was. Now I will say this though: was the dad almost too supportive?
Too supportive, absolutely. He's for sure.
Because he wasn't holding the kids bringing home like 40s, and he's like, you almost got the 8 max.
I think that's you almost got the 8. I think that's part of the problem too, probably with him. I mean, if you think about like real life people. No one's like telling him he has to do these things.
Something about this movie that I want to mention is it's very funny.
Oh yeah. It has some of. It's like I feel like it's one of the most quotable Wes Anderson films.
Well, and do y'all know that term mumblecore? That's kind of like the laughs aren't like they aren't big, mumblecore. Massive laughs.
Oh
but
wait,
they're
wait, what? I've never heard this term before.
Mumblecore. That's kind of the comedy comes from a much smaller thing. So the comedy comes from the way someone will react to something. Like whenever he says he's wearing his OR scrub and he says, "Oh, are they?" Yeah. And then Bill Murray just goes like that. That gets a big laugh, and that's kind of.
I feel like Wes Anderson might be the only person in the mumblecore genre, but I mean, I'm sure there's more. But he's the only person I think about when I think about
all three of these movies are funny, and they're all three funny and dry and kind of
they're very
subtle
dry.
Ways. So I really enjoyed it. Anything that you did not like about Rushmore?
I don't know. Woo, my voice. No, that sounded weird. I think this kind of lands somewhere in the middle. And so you talked about Max and acting like he's older than he is or more mature than he is, and he thinks he's got it all figured out and handled. But I think part of my problem with that, or not part of my problem with it, or the problem with it in the movie is that people do kind of treat him like an adult. I mean, his relationship with Bill Murray, it works for the movie because that's what's supposed to happen. But Bill Murray treats him like an adult, and so that's
like from the beginning, like off the jump.
Right. I think the person who treats him,
he asked for $35,000 and goes, "I'll give you $2,500."
Right. I think the person who treats him the most realistically, other than the time she almost kisses him, which is a little weird, is Rosemary. I mean, she kind of the way that she responds to him is very much like almost like she's like, "Aw."
Well, look, she handles it very professionally and handles it well. It's just that Max is tenacious.
Yeah, but everybody else around him treats him with such like respect and treats him like an adult.
And I wonder, and I didn't think about this before, but through us talking about the movie, I wonder how much of that is because we're kind of viewing it through the lens of Max Fisher, and is that kind of his
how he thinks people are responding to him?
How he thinks that everybody is responding to him. But then again, you have Murray constantly hanging out with him, so there's absolutely some truth there. The almost kissing scene was interesting to me because like you said, Rosemary, that entire movie, as one should, fended off Max's attacks, and to me that was a moment where, like, despite it all, he still almost broke her down and almost did it. But in the end, she did the right thing. She did the right thing. She kicks him out. But I do love how he shows up and he has the blood on his head. And then immediately when she leaves the room, he puts the tape on, which is an excellent song, by the way. I don't know the name of that song on the tape that he puts on, but it's on
one of my.
It's on my cooking playlist.
He
it's an
comes
incredible
in
song.
and just sticks the tape.
Yes, a little romantic French music
just
in the
laying
background.
in the bed.
To set the mood. Jason Schwartzman is that who?
Yeah,
he's hilarious.
He's so young in this movie. I think one of the cool things about all of Wes Anderson's films is that you get to watch Jason Schwartzman grow up.
Yeah,
I mean, like all the way through.
You get to watch Bill Murray grow old.
Ooh, is Bill Murray the only person who's in all three of these? Is
Schwartzman's in Budapest.
Is he in Life Aquatic?
Does Schwartzman make an appearance in Life Aquatic?
I think just Bill Murray is.
Jason Schwartzman isn't in. Oh no, he is in Budapest.
He is. Yeah, he's the bad concierge in Budapest.
But I think Bill Murray might be the only one that's in all three of these.
That's a good question. Yeah, we'll have to see.
Willem Dafoe is in two of them.
Yeah. There's a lot of recurring characters.
Bill Murray might be the only one. Yeah, if you look at the trailer for Isle of Dogs, like everyone in Hollywood is in that movie. Like it seems like he adds new people every movie.
But it is his
uses
crew
a lot
too.
of the
It's
same.
still his core crew.
Yeah.
But that makes sense too as you grow older. When I was younger, I always wondered why directors use the same people over again. But now that you get older and you start working a job, you appreciate it's just in a workplace environment. You want to work with people you get along with. And in a creative environment like that, if you know you work well with these people, bring it back.
And honestly, does Bill Murray, I mean, obviously, he's a different character in every movie, but he's kind of the same guy in every single movie.
Well, Nathan, what were you talking about before the show with Bill Murray? Talking about how you were saying something along the lines of no one's better at like...
Oh, yeah. He's the way that whenever his comedy comes from just accepting life as it comes at him, and his character's life comes at him in waves. Like it hits him, it puts him through the ringer, and instead of like fighting against it or getting mad or losing his cool, he accepts it. And the way that he accepts it with like this face of, yeah, I guess so. And he just goes with it.
Cigarette
it's
hanging out
funny.
the mouth.
Exactly.
Man, people love to smoke in a Wes Anderson movie.
Yeah, especially in the 90s movie. It loses a little bit along the way. But yeah, it's... Bill Murray's been in every Wes Anderson movie except Bottle Rocket. Okay, Joe Rodriguez filling us in. Bill Murray's been in every Wes Anderson movie except for Bottle Rocket, which is Wes Anderson's first movie. Oh, I want to see that now as well.
Oh, yeah. It's a lot different.
One of my favorite scenes, Nathan, which is right to what you're talking about, is the Bill Murray birthday party pool scene where his wife's like obviously cheating on him. He's got these two just terrible twin boys. Yes, smoking the cigarette. Like the amount of the amount of the lack of concern for everybody surrounding him, I absolutely love in that scene. Doesn't give a damn that people are there for the party.
Yeah.
He's so over everything.
But yeah, it's
smoking a cigarette. It's like you said, he's rich,
his
but
wife
just like
is flirting with another man right there, and his attitude is just she's I guess so.
Gets up, downs the whiskey, and just in front of the whole party, like kind of
so
like a
young
damn
in
you
this
all. I
movie.
don't care about any of you. He is, and we'll see him get older. Sorry, go ahead.
No,
Rivers.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, because we're about to wrap up here on Rushmore. Anything that y'all want to add on the way out of Rushmore?
Yes. One of my very favorite lines, and I think if I was a single lady and some guy wanted to pick me up, she's my Rushmore. That is, that would work on me. That would work on me. You're my Rushmore.
Okay, interesting.
It's a very niche pickup line. Don't try it on everyone.
If you had your red beret on, then maybe that would be a tip for somebody to go ahead and
which I do own.
Yeah, because like you said, you do have excellent Halloween costumes. You should maybe like put a picture of those on the show. All right, Nathan, anything to add before on the way out?
I think it's very impressive how this is his second movie. I think Bottle Rocket came out like 2 years before it. And I mean, within the first few seconds, you can tell it's a Wes Anderson movie. His style it sometimes seems to take directors like decades till their style is recognizable by everyone. And in his second movie, I mean, even in Bottle Rocket, you see it, but this one, he's got it down.
Yeah, I will. I will second that completely. That was my final thought as well. Is just that, as we'll talk about, it's so cohesive. Wes Anderson's style is, and to be that young, for this to be a second movie, and to be that sure of yourself, speaks of a very natural and immense level of talent.
Yeah. I do think though this one, and maybe because I did the same as you, like I watched them very close together. This one seemed, I mean, they obviously get more Wes Anderson-y.
Yes,
it
absolutely.
gets more extreme. The style really
Yes, this is the most, you could tell that he's still not comfortable enough in going as weird or out there as he wants to be.
Right.
Like this is definitely the most realistic as far as just the aesthetics of it.
And that's how I feel about Bottle Rocket too.
I've not seen Bottle Rocket, so I got to see Bottle Rocket.
I think primarily the use of music and the framing that he's popular for is kind of what his like the camera doesn't really move at all in the movies. Which
it's so beautiful though.
Yeah, it is.
I think that we watched that the other day. T-Bob pulled up an SNL clip of a spoof of a Wes Anderson trailer. But it's funny because like I don't think you have to know a lot about Wes Anderson to like see things. Like you don't have to have seen any of his movies, but you know that when you see stuff like that, you're like, oh, they're making fun of Wes Anderson.
Yeah, he's definitely pervaded
certain
pop
like
culture
sounds, music, like shots.
He was at the forefront of like the hipster kind of revolution. I guess I do too.
A slow motion shot with Helvetica New in it.
Oof.
That's what you need.
That's all I need. Oh, a good line and some Helvetica New.
Is Helvetica New a font?
Yeah, it is.
That's
Come on,
his
T-Bob.
font. Like up until Fantastic Mr. Fox, that was his font. Well, that and Futura.
Which
Futura,
one is it? Any of those?
yeah.
Well, that's Helvetica New over there.
Right,
and
which
then
one, right here?
On the very right.
Very right.
Right next to it is that's Helvetica. That's.
If you want to get some hipster in your life, just Helvetica New it.
Okay, so that is Rushmore. I thought it was really enjoyable. I love this movie. It's hilarious. It kept me very engaged beginning to end. It's not a huge time commitment, hour, 30 minutes. Recommended to anyone. Let's move on next to Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou.
Yes.
Sorry for getting so weird with that. Nathan, tell us a little bit about Life
Aquatic with Steve Zissou, 2005, written by Wes Anderson. And I would say the other person who is the head of the mumblecore movement, Noah Baumbach, who did like Squid and the Whale, Meyerowitz stories.
Yeah. I don't know those movies.
Well, actually, in Rushmore, do you remember how he opens the library book and he sees that quote?
Yes. It's something along the lines of...
Jacques Cousteau.
Yeah, it is from Jacques Cousteau, but it's like a person with extraordinary talent or whatever.
Has a responsibility to a person who's lived an extraordinary life has a responsibility to share it with the world.
Yeah, okay,
something along those lines. And and Wes Anderson does not keep it close to his chest that he is a massive Cousteau fan, and this character is pretty much based. I mean, the outfit, that's exactly what Cousteau wore. He was like an engineer, oceanographer, inventor, a filmmaker. And so you can pretty much see. Anyway, Zissou is pretty much Cousteau. And he's an oceanic documentary filmmaker who's kind of seeing the end of his glory days. People know who he is. People ask for his autograph. But his new movies are not doing very well. Yeah. And it's all the worse for him because in his newest movie that people don't really like, his best friend... His partner on all of these ventures dies. Esteban, he gets killed by a jaguar shark.
Eaten by a jaguar shark.
So he wants to continue. He wants to go out. He wants to make part 2 of the documentary where he gets that shark, but no one likes his movies. He can't find any funding. Then his possible son shows up, Ned Plimpton, played by Owen Wilson, and he also turns out to have quite the inheritance from his mother who just committed suicide. And he teams up with Zissou, becomes a member of Zissou, and they go out and they try and get the jaguar shark.
Yeah, and so off the bat with Life Aquatic, this was probably, during watching it, this was probably my least favorite of the 3 we're going to talk about, but in a weird way, it's also the one that I found myself reflecting the most on. And I don't know if it's because I was trying to find some sort of meaning, and it's probably the one that I'm kind of most excited to go watch again. Nathan, we'll start with you again. What was what was something that you liked about this movie that stood out to you?
Well, I like, and I do think that just from a critical standpoint, this would I'd probably put it at the bottom, near the bottom, but I enjoy this movie a lot. Personally, I really enjoyed it, and I think it would probably appeal to not as many people.
I do agree with that. It's super stylistic.
Yes,
I think
this is a Wes Anderson-y film.
I think this is like an example of a filmmaker needing to kind of make a movie that's probably not going to be very accepted, but creatively they need to push the boundaries, see what they can get away with. And I love his aesthetic, and he pushes it far, and I really enjoy that. Like the colors, the dialogue. Yes. I think it kind of takes 3 viewings, I found, to really get some of the dialogue and some of the jokes because they are really out of place. They're not natural, but it does work.
I think what turned me off the bat was just that I found Steve so unlikable. And
he's a jerk.
And the thing is, though, that's absolutely by design.
Right.
And even by the end of the movie, it's not what I love about it. It's not even that he went through some huge redemption arc where suddenly he's like a great person. That doesn't really happen. I think he just more acknowledges that he is kind of an asshole, and he's like, yeah, maybe I'll be a bit better, but like I'm kind of.
But I'm gonna be who I am.
I'm okay with that. I am who I am at this point in my life. Rivers, what stood out to you about this
kind of
movie?
what Nathan said. I love all of the colors that Wes Anderson uses in his movies. Yeah. Like even just this this shot of the, I don't know if this is like the official
I think
film
this
poster,
is,
whatever.
This is
just like the blues and the yellows, and then I know in some of his movies he uses a lot of oranges, and something about it is very just like pleasing.
Ooh, if
to
you
my...
like colors, let me tell you about Grand Budapest Hotel.
Oh, I know.
Right?
Are we skipping to Grand Budapest now?
No, but yes, we will talk about colors in that movie. I mean, it's like I think for some people you could kind of look at it and it might be a little much, but I really like it. It's like pleasing to my eyes.
This movie is a visual feast. Some of my favorite shots, and what I love, he does this thing where, and this goes to line with, I think you're seeing the movie through the character's eyes. I think it's also maybe some other commentary where he does this thing where this movie's a weird mixture of real life and fake imaginary stuff, right? And making things look like obviously a movie set, even though we're accepting that this is what's actually happening to these characters. And it even plays with the ideas of documentaries not really truly being reality. Like there's that great line where he's like, this is a documentary, everything's real. And it's like, obviously not. They just set up the shot or whatever, right? And this whole kind of movie, I guess you could say, is almost a commentary on that. And to me, and this is once again me drawing parallels that this is completely on me. I don't think Wes Anderson has never said anything like this, and I'm probably way out of bounds interpreting this movie on my own way, but whatever. I got the feeling thinking about this movie more afterwards that Steve Zissou in a lot of ways represents a almost like a director, like a very famous director who your entire life you burst onto the scene maybe, and then you have this intense creative pressure to, okay, you set the bar high, you now have to go past that bar. And I think you see how hard that can be and how that can wear a person down. And you see how everybody else around him is depending on him to be the captain of that shit, to lead the way ship. and that really is, though, I mean, that's kind of how a director is. Like one of these famous directors, and they bring the old band back together. Like his crew are kind of like his actors that he uses in all these movies.
That's kind of how Max Fisher is as well.
Yes, I know.
I mean, it's
I know. The same. Which goes back to one of the central themes, which are these magnetic characters that warp the world around them and have so much riding on their shoulders. But I thought in this movie especially, at times I felt like this was almost Anderson doing a commentary on fame and the creative pressures that come with it, and that even if you create something good, it doesn't always mean that you're happy. At the very end of this movie, he finally gets back into form. He creates a critical darling. Everybody's
like chasing that thing, and you're never going to get it.
Yeah, and he's sitting outside just like depressed, smoking as people take pictures of him, just obviously not giving a damn about kind of it all anymore. So I think this movie, the more I've thought about it, has actually become way more impressive, and I absolutely want to watch it again.
Well, that's like real life. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I mean, that's like real life. I mean, you think about how you make a plan and you're going to like accomplish something, and you want to accomplish that thing because it's going to make you feel good. And so you're chasing this feeling of like accomplishment, and then you get it, and then you want to hold on to it, or you want it to intensify. So you want to do that next thing, and then you want to do that next thing, and you want to stay in this like state of intensified joy.
You're chasing the rabbit.
But you're never ever going to get there. You know?
Well, and the other thing is a lot of times the failures stick out more than the good stuff. It's like if 10 people give you compliments and one person rips on you, the one person that rips on you is the one that's going to stick with you more. Nathan, what were you going to say though?
Yeah, you've seen Royal Tenenbaums and Darjeeling, right? I kind of feel like those three. This is like the middle of like some type of unofficial trilogy, because those three in particular are all about these incredibly broken families.
Yeah,
they are family, but anyway, this is pretty much them trying to repair an immensely broken family in a way that hopefully ends up in something closer in the end. And Darjeeling, this, and Royal Tenenbaums follow that incredibly closely. And I think this is an interesting like next step for him, not stylistically, and also just the way that he goes about telling stories.
One thing that I loved with this movie, stylistically, aesthetically, and it's kind of different maybe from the other ones. You spoke on how a lot of Wes Anderson shots are very static and just incredibly well framed. It's almost like looking at a painting.
Yeah.
But my favorite shots in this one were the tracking shots with the open boat set,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like where you're going from room to room, and it almost feels like it's one of Max Fisher's plays, but just
Right.
like given like a huge budget behind it. Like it feels like a stage theater type of set and theater type of practical effects. And I just I love all of this. Every scene that they do involving the kind of half cut out ship is it's so good and adds so much life to the movie.
Yeah, and I guess we can talk about it more with Grand Budapest, because he starts to do this a lot more as he starts making movies. Is he almost treats live action as animated as it could possibly be.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Like with Grand Budapest, with this, he treats this sets like they're doll houses, like they're
that's exactly
what it is. I had not been able to put my finger on it. It's like a dollhouse type of vibe.
Characters almost have this vibrance in them, as if they're like characters that would come with a dollhouse or something.
Well, it's like I love miniatures. Okay, it's some of my favorite things in the world. George R.R. Martin has, ever since I guess he loves miniatures too, so he's super rich, obviously, Game of Thrones. So he has these incredible miniatures dioramas throughout his house. Because I spent like an hour the other day looking at every scene, and you peer into every room and you look at the little like interactions that are going on. And that's exactly what this feels like, Nathan. You're spot on. It feels like these dolls or these little miniatures that are just in the middle of their life, and it just works so good.
You can even see him dabbling a little with the stop motion animation. Like they have the crabs. You can. It feels like he wants to make animated movies. Like he.
Where did Fantastic Mr. Fox?
I don't know.
Where's that land in that time?
Yeah, that's after Darjeeling was Fantastic.
And was
Mr.
Darjeeling
Fox.
before Life Aquatic? Or afterwards?
This was before Darjeeling.
Okay.
And I think because with Darjeeling, that was kind of the point where I think his style kind of needed to be revamped a little bit, because that was when like people would make tons of YouTube videos doing his style, Helvetica, the type of like 80s songs, maybe some Kinks music thrown in there, Rolling Stones, and with Fantastic Mr. Fox, that's where I guess. What is this one? I forget. Moonrise Kingdom is immediately after that. And after Fantastic Mr. Fox, his style evolves like leaps and bounds almost.
Am I wrong, or was all the movie music in this movie, at least like the licensed music, was it all just acoustic versions of David Bowie saying in Portuguese?
Yeah, some of it was by the Sioux.
I mean, I know there were a few songs, but I remember during the credit scene that maybe it was all by Bowie. I don't know. We'll have to check, but I really did enjoy that, the Portuguese version of Rocket Man.
I love that guy. I really, really liked the dynamic between Bill Murray and Angelica Houston and Jeff Goldblum.
We didn't talk about Jeff Goldblum.
I love him so much.
Be still
he's
Cody.
Fantastic. But I love her.
I liked him better in Grand Budapest, but he's good here.
Oh, yeah.
But I love Angelica Houston.
She's the glue that the group needs.
Yes.
Everything falls apart when she's not there.
Yes,
for Steve
absolutely,
Zissou.
and I love that.
Isn't it so sad at the beginning whenever they say that she's the brains behind Zissou, so who are you? And then Esteban goes, he's the Zissou.
He's the Zissou. Willem Dafoe, man, he's and I guess he's not really.
He's so funny.
I love the
he
part,
just wants
he's
love
not
from Steve.
When he slaps Ned and then he says, I'm gonna get you. I owe you one, and then he goes, not if I don't see you first, Sonny.
He is an excellent. He's not a villain in this movie, really, but like he's an excellent villain.
Well, his face looks like it's so angular and crazy and manic looking.
Yeah. He shot a movie in Baton Rouge a couple years ago. On my street, I walked out of my house, and there was all these
That's insane.
Yeah, there's all these movie trailers, and I was like, oh, what's going on? And right as I thought that to myself, Willem Dafoe walks by my house and sort of waves at me, and I was like.
Oh my God, that would be such a weird way to walk out your house.
Here we are. Am I in a Wes Anderson movie?
Anything that y'all did not like about this movie? I have one thing that stands out. But like I said, I think Steve was a little unlikable. I think the humor can be a little impenetrable or kind of off-putting at first.
I do think some of this, I kind of think that Wes Anderson, like if you take away all of his tricks and stylistic ticks, then there's not. The story it's not great story.
Yeah,
it's
the story's not, it's not super strong.
This is probably my least favorite Wes Anderson movie.
Well, I think what I like about it is kind of there are so many rough edges about it. Like critically, it does have a lot of problems. And I think that it might accentuate his biggest problem in just his style is that sometimes he winds everything, the story, the dialogue, the sequences so tightly that emotionally you can't really feel anything sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and so because what about the father-son story in this? Because it didn't. Yeah, well, like what you said, Nathan, I don't know if it quite landed with the emotional punch that you wanted it to. Like, there's the shot.
Was that on purpose? You know, like, not on purpose, but I mean, I feel like he wanted them to not land. That he wanted it to not land quite.
Almost, I don't know if even like that. I think that there is some of the relationships, even with the reporter, feel kind of stale. Not in like, I don't know, like it's still charming, but it's almost more charming in like an academic sense, or like just thinking of.
Do you think it's the way they interact with each other, and because when they interact, it's so dry?
Yeah.
Do you think that's why we can't feel emotionally invested?
Oh, I think it's also because I don't know how emotionally invested Steve is. Even by the end, he's still a little. I mean, he definitely. I think when he has his kind of emotional breakthroughs, when he sees the jaguar shark again. And he says the line, "I wonder if he still remembers me." I thought that was a great scene. I think the music's great. I think that actually hits some emotional punch because you see this very stoic, unflappable character in Steve Zissou. Maybe I shouldn't say unflappable because he gets angry at times, but you never really see him sad or kind of vulnerable until that moment. And so I think it works for that reason.
Owen Wilson is kind of a rock in the shoe.
That's okay. So that's what I was going to ask about next. We talk about it a bit. That accent.
Yeah, and also just his look. I mean, I know he's from Texas, but he looks like a California guy, and I don't believe he's from Kentucky.
Oh, see, I bought that he was the All-American Kentucky kid.
I could buy that.
I didn't know he was from Texas. I'm kind of shocked then with how bad that country accent was. And what do y'all think? Was that by design though, for the country accent to be so stylistic?
Well, that's what's
I think
tough.
so. Yes.
These everything is so detailed in all these movies that it's hard to tell what is intentional and what's a mistake. Like the comedy is so subtle that you can't tell. Like,
I think that it's supposed to be bad.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make it any less annoying, but
I mean, it would be weird for Wes Anderson to overlook such a kind of glaring. Yeah. I think he's supposed to be so stereotypical, all-American, perfect child that's kind of
but if you think
right
about
in line
Owen
with
Wilson's
what you think about
accent in general. He kind of is his accent.
He's got a little bit of a weird voice, doesn't he?
Wow.
You know who? Oh wow!
That was...
There we go. That's it. Banker guy is one of my favorite underrated characters in his arc in this movie.
I kind of think he's hilarious.
And then by the end, he's a complete member of the crew. He's given up on justifying things when Jeff Goldblum's like, "Where'd y'all get this stuff?" He's like, "I fucking stole it." Dude.
I love whenever he's introduced and he's like, "I hope you're not going to screw us on this deal." And then he goes, "Well, I may be a banker, but I'm also a human being." And then he goes, "I take that back. You're right." And like just the way that they deliver that line. I will say Rushmore takes a lot stylistically from a movie called Harold and Maude, which is like back, I forget when that was made, but this is the kid in Harold and Maude. He didn't really have much
the
of
banker
a career.
is?
Yeah, the banker is.
That's interesting.
And I think he ends up in Grand Budapest in a certain role. I can't remember where. I'd have to look it up.
Man, I love Jeff Goldblum.
I thought, Jeff
great.
Goldblum's character didn't super stand out to me in this one. I don't know why.
I just love. I'll watch anything with Jeff Goldblum.
I will too.
It's I loved the whole thing about how he so much of his identity is that he's bisexual or that he's kind of gay.
Yeah.
How much he brings that up.
Yes.
He's like, well, it's okay with me. I'm part gay.
Well, then I love Bill Murray, because the whole movie Bill Murray's cracking on him for being gay. But then he doesn't want him to get one over on him. So when he says that, Bill Murray's like, "Well, I heard everybody is." So it's like, so that's not even special.
Me too.
I am too.
But eat that. I love the way that his crew is like all of these. They almost look like robot human beings.
I do love that. I love that they're the very high priced, technologically advanced, well funded, got their shit together, and Bill Murray's definitely got the ragtag ensemble. I wish that I knew more about Jacques Cousteau to really fully appreciate it.
I will say, there is a documentary that Cousteau made called The Silent World, which, particularly from the color aspect, it looks like they pretty much just watched that movie and Wes Anderson was like, that's the color scheme we're going for. It looks exactly like this movie.
It's good to know, because I find it very pleasing and relaxing.
Anything else to add on Life Aquatic before we move on to Grand Budapest?
I don't think so.
I don't think so, no.
Yeah, I think...
didn't, really quick though, we didn't even talk about Cate Blanchett.
Oh, okay, I should say... I don't know if much of that story arc landed with me.
I could have, I don't.
In terms of,
I don't know. I mean, I
would almost have to rewatch to really understand the role that her character kind of played in the whole thing.
I liked how she kind of made Bill Murray feel even more like a failure. Like whenever he's
that's a good point.
That was like the only thing that I thought their interactions were good. I think overwatching it a few times, I have bought into the relationship with her and Ned. But I don't know.
I can believe the relationship with her and Ned. I mean, I think Ned's got his own issues, obviously, with abandonment and insecurity, and she's there for him. And she has, I know he's got daddy issues. She has babies, etc. And maybe he's feeling like, hey, I want to
take care of her.
Be the dad. Take care of her, take care of this baby so it doesn't grow up in the same way I did. But I don't know. I just didn't feel a very big emotional connection with her.
So many love triangles, always.
Always, Wes Anderson. Who's the old man on the financier?
What is
the guy who raises funds? Because he
plays Dumbledore.
He has got a magnificent...
Oh my gosh, I was trying to think of who that is.
I forget his name.
Dumbledore.
Michael
He's got
Gambon.
Such a good voice.
Michael Gambon.
Okay, his voice is unbelievable. All right, so that is Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. Stevesy, I guess we could call him.
Stevesy.
It's not a bad impulse, though. Some kind of name.
I know, that's so good, dude. Yes, call him Dad. That was kind of sad. Up next, we have the Grand Budapest Hotel, our final Wes Anderson movie of the day. Nathan, give us some background on Grand Budapest.
This is the most recent Wes Anderson movie, and it feels like the most. And I kind of feel like the more he makes movies, they're probably going to feel even more Wes Anderson with each one. But anyway, this story starts with a girl who is, there's like a winding road that leads you into the story. There's a girl reading a book in Zabrovka at a mural of an author.
Yes, I love the layered approach to getting into this story.
We then see the author who is introducing us to a story of his younger self who visited the Grand Budapest Hotel before it was like way past its heyday. And while he visits as a younger man, he runs into the legendary Zissou, who is very old now. And he asks, he's invited to dinner by Zissou so that Zissou can tell him his story. And Zissou then goes back to when he was a child, whenever he was working under Gustav H. Ralph Fiennes, who is the concierge of the Grand Budapest Hotel at the height of its glory and glamour, right before a war that broke out, a fictional war in a fictional country.
Which is and by the end of this movie, you learn that, and the iconography that they use for the fictional army.
Oh, even the SS.
Yes, it's super Nazi like, and apparently, and this is what I'm fascinated to learn more about. At the very end, you learn that these are based off of the diary or the writings of a real person during that time. Now, I don't want to speak to it because I don't know if he was like a concierge, but I think he worked in Vienna. Yeah. And so that is a city that's been opulent and known for the arts and music and all these incredible things. And it would have been shocking to live in that kind of civilized, you think of yourself as super advanced, and then you have the Nazis coming in and taking everything over. So even though it's not like I don't think the war commentary part is the main crux of this movie.
No.
I feel like it does a very effective job of giving you some perspective on what it must have been like.
Always there, too. It's in the background of this entire movie. Yes,
absolutely. It's a shadow hanging over the film, and I think that it gives you a very good insight into what it must have been like for many people who didn't give a damn about what the Nazi ideology was or what they were all about, and had their entire lives turned upside down because of it.
They didn't really know what was going on back then. It's you get that feeling here. Well, anyway, Ray finds his character, Gustav H. He kind of wines and dines the older clientele, the rich female clientele, and kind of the richest is Tilda Swinton, and she ends up dying.
What is Tilda's last name in this movie? They keep saying it. No, not Swinton.
It doesn't say.
Lutz. No.
It's Lutz is the town. It's something absolutely insane, like Ninden, Texas, or something. I'll look it up. Continue though, Nathan. What?
Yeah. So she ends up dying, and there's a gigantic estate, which a priceless painting is left to him.
A massive estate too. It really reinforces it when he's walking to the will scene, and you're going through.
You're going to the whole house.
You can see why parts of countries around there kind of wanted to go for communism. It kind of makes sense when you see a house that's that gigantic. And anyway, it's a little bit weird. He shows up right whenever he is given the painting through this new document. Anyway, he seems to have been framed for the murder, so they're then on the run.
Yeah, and so first off the bat, I love the setup here. I love the layered approach. It gives this very oral storybook type of feel where you, like you said, you have the girl looking at the statue, into the old author, into the young author, into then Zero's story. The old actor who plays Zero probably actually has the best voice ever.
F. Murray Abraham.
Oh my God.
Have y'all seen Amadeus? That's the guy in Amadeus.
Oh, wait, who's he in Amadeus?
Salieri.
Oh, he is.
That's Salieri.
Oh my God! Of course, I knew I recognized him.
Is he the one that sounds? I can't ever figure out if it's him or the other guy telling the story. Is he the one that sounds like he could do trailers?
He is the one that just sounds like his voice is a bed on which you would like to rest your head for the rest of eternity.
Well, I feel like there was one guy and I couldn't figure out if it was him
It's
or...
him. It's Zero.
Okay, I couldn't tell if it was Zero or if it was the other narrator.
No.
Because they go between.
No, the
sometimes
the older man. It's mainly Zero.
Okay,
I think that's narrating.
Either way, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
you could not have described it better. He does. He sounds like he's narrating a trailer.
So I love the story setup. I love the layered approach, and I love the.
You kind of sound like him sometimes.
I love the. Well, I think
Are you
now I'm like trying to like add a little baritone
I was actually
to
thinking,
my voice.
Well, I was thinking that. I wrote that down. Like T-Bob's voice. Look,
hey, nice.
I wrote that in my notes.
Now I'm blushing. That's the best compliment that I've ever gotten. But I love this setup with the giant estate, with the will, and just an estate that is almost essentially royalty. And the fallout that comes from that. I think it's a very creative story all the way through. And it's the most story-like of any of these movies. Like, as far as the plot goes,
what
am I struggling? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it's very plot-based, right? Yeah. I think I'm struggling to get my point across, but it's very much, even though it's shot and told in such a different way, it's almost a more traditional movie story than some of the previous films we talked about. What stood out to y'all about this film?
I think what I like the most about this movie is that watching it, just the experience of watching it, not necessarily what is happening in the story, but it feels like the mechanics of what's going on. It's like looking at a Swiss watch work almost inside of it. Like so much, there's so many jokes that happen in the frame, like all over. Like there's sometimes that you could see 3 jokes happening on screen, and the way that everything moves, it feels I guess.
So I'm a big fan of comic books, and a lot of my favorite directors are the ones who go so over the top stylistic with their shots and with their characters. And these characters, to your point, Nathan, about Wes Anderson obviously loving animated movies, these characters look like animated characters. The three sisters that they're always showing could be out of any, Disney film as the antagonist that you've seen.
The stepsisters.
Adrian Brody is this like menacing, you see Adrian Brody and you know that character through and through. You see Willem Dafoe, you know that character through and through. And really, I think it's like that with everybody in this movie. And that's something that absolutely appeals to me, as it has a very storybook type of feel in that way.
And I got one other thing I really love. Like Ralph Fiennes, he's like he's in Schindler's List. He's in English Patient.
That's what
he's Lord Voldemort. Movie. Like he's not known as a comedic actor. And so much of this movie, I think more than other Wes Anderson movies, the dialogue, the way that he delivers dialogue, it's so fast. Like he goes through so much dialogue so quickly, and just the way that he delivers it is hilarious.
Not only do I hate it, I'm physically repulsed by them when he's talking about her nails. It's so good.
She's dead, and you think that I did it, didn't you?
I'm just happy that I feel like Wes Anderson gets to this movie and he's finally like letting his freak flag fly. He's like, we're gonna do the thing.
Yes.
And the colors in this, again, we talked about colors. The colors in this one, woo!
Yeah.
That dining scene where the orange, and I almost feel like what happened.
And then they light like specifically the table that they're sitting at.
What
everything
is the
goes dark
thing,
around. It's like you're getting
it's
fully enveloped in the story Zero's
telling.
What's
the experience that you have? Is it like flashing lights where you're like, it gives you a seizure or whatever?
Epilepsy.
But is that what it's like, flashing lights or whatever? I feel like you could watch this movie and that might happen to you because it's so intense.
Yeah, as a child, I remember all parents were warned against letting their kids watch Pokemon.
Oh, really?
Because a
the
Pikachu
colors?
scene one time caused some kids in Japan to have seizures or whatever. It triggered it.
I love the colors, but I also love Gustav's character so much. It's like you start off and you're not sure about him, and then just watching him, I mean, he's
another
such
kind of androgynous character
but
as well.
But he's very open about how androgynous he is. But just, I think he is such
a cheaper cuts.
He is such. I've heard they taste better.
Okay, so I don't want to cut you off, but this highlights something that I found very interesting, I found in every one of these movies, is which his main characters are an odd mixture of very sophisticated and above like the male impulses, while also being pretty raunchy at the exact same time, right? Like Max Fisher putting on airs, but then making up lies about getting a hand job from the hot mom. Right. I guess Bill Murray's just a little more upfront raunchy, but Fiend's in this, yes, he's like all sophisticated, and he recites poetry and everything else, and he's so excellent, but at the end of the day, he's still he
sleeping
goes on,
with these old women.
Yeah, and he goes on this excellent analogy rant about, like Nathan said, everything's filet when you're younger. I prefer the easier cuts, or what is he say?
Cheaper cuts.
Yeah,
the cheaper
cuts, exactly.
More flavorful.
So yeah, there's odd little times when he gets a little raunchy, and you even see it at times when Fiend's just like breaks off saying something. He's like, oh, you know what? Fuck it. It's not even worth it.
Well, I think that, his relationship with those women at first, because that's all you know about him, really, in the very beginning, is like his relationship with these women, which seems strange because they're all older. But then you're kind of like, oh, maybe he's doing this thing where he's like comforting them. He finds happiness in comforting these women. But I think that bleeds over into his relationship with all people. And it's a really good lesson in just like how being kind to people and will serve you better later in life. You know, like it all comes back to you.
They reinforce that because there's a few times in the movie where the whole reason why he gets out of a sticky situation is because it's somebody that he's been kind to. It's like this
butterfly effect of being kind to people and how it has a larger impact on your life. And so then you're kind of like, oh, maybe it's okay that he's with these like old ladies.
Yeah, it's a karmic type of deal.
Because it really, if you think about it, it is very strange. But also, these old women, Tilda Swinton's character, you know, like she comes there to see him because he gives her comfort, and she's old, and
her family is like
her family hates her or whatever, you know, and like.
To my point though about these characters being so sophisticated and seemingly good-willed, yet having this much more human kind of debased side, at the same time, my man wants his money. Right? There's a reason why he's going to the will.
Right.
There's a reason why he's like, we must get there immediately. It's not just out of...
Well, he respects them. He respects them who they are.
And Zero does tell you that he thinks that he enjoys it as well.
Yeah.
But, even when he sees the old lady dead body, right? He's like, give me a cold glass of water. He talks for a couple seconds and they're like, hey, we're about to do the will. And he's like, oh, okay. Yeah,
well, even on the train when he has the painting and he's like, oh, I'm going to keep this. I'm going to hang it. I'm going to stare at it all the time, blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, a couple seconds later, he's like in his twin bed or whatever on the train. He's like, actually, we should sell it. Like,
oh, it's so perfect, dude. This movie also very funny.
Yes, this movie is very funny.
Now, as much as I didn't like Jeff Goldblum in the last one, I absolutely loved Jeff Goldblum in this movie. His dialogue, you want to talk about snappy dialogue? Jeff Goldblum explaining the legal situation. It's also a good plot element, like a good plot device, I guess you could call it, where he does a very good job of presenting a lot of dense information in a tight pack directly to the audience to get us up to speed with what's going on. But it makes sense within the fiction of the world because he is the lawyer. He is the executor of the will. So I thought Jeff Goldblum was great in this one. This might have been my favorite out of the three. I'm not entirely sure.
I'll say another thing that I really like in terms of the progression of his career is that I think after Fantastic Mr. Fox, instead of focusing on like smaller family dramas, like with Moonrise Kingdom, he branched out a lot more, like created this whole island, had this whole community that he like really fleshed out. And on this one, obviously a lot more so. And Isle of Dogs seems like that's going to be even larger, but even stylistically, like obviously he loves a wide frame. And for most of this movie, it's like an old style frame. Like
okay, so I actually restarted the movie because I thought I had bought the movie in standard definition because of the you're used to seeing letterbox. You're not used to seeing the vertical. Portrait. I don't even know what you would call it.
It's called the Academy ratio, like for old movies, like it's classic Hollywood type of movies.
And they don't hit the Academy ratio until they go back in time.
Right, and
so there's a clear line of demarcation.
I think it changes from the Jude Law area has like anamorphic, and then it's standard for everything else, and then old time is the box frame, which is why that challenge.
You want to hear something funny?
Did you not notice?
No, I did. I recognized. I didn't notice it change, but I thought the exact same
You
thing.
thought you bought it in standard
I was like, because you can, because I rented it. You can rent them in standard or high definition, and I'm like, oh, I must have pressed the wrong one.
I restarted the movie to double check.
Widescreen.
No, exactly. So that's why I went back to the beginning, because I was like, maybe this is just to throw you back in time.
Yeah.
And indeed it was. It's the
That's
subtle
fun.
touches that are.
A scene I really liked was the when he's in prison or whatever, and it just seemed very Wes Anderson because he's so tedious with his with all the details, but just the scene where they're all digging to get the hole, they get the weapons or whatever they're digging with.
Yeah, they're digging
tools.
Little smuggled digging
They
tools.
smuggled them into this thing, and then they get them to this thing, and I don't know, it just felt very like.
I like just how Gustav, no matter what, and this goes back to the magnetic character that shapes the
Why
world
didn't
around
the
him.
other people? Sorry, I'm just thinking about this. Why didn't the other people stay out of jail when they helped him?
Why didn't what? They
Wait,
did.
they did. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
no,
Sorry.
no,
I was
no,
not
they-
thinking back.
they ran
just
away.
separated. They just separated.
They
Got
didn't.
it.
They didn't spend 10 minutes talking like Gustav did right after he escapes from jail, talking to Zero.
I like how Zero's starting to tell that poem, and he's like, "Save your spot because I definitely want to hear this."
He's so gracious, right? He's like, I definitely want to hear the end of this, but we must go. And we too must go from Grand Budapest. All right. So this is that point in the show where we rank our 3 movies and we reveal them. Are we good to go on our rankings?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't think mine changed during talking about this, although we'll get into it. Nathan, do you want to start us? We'll go. What is your third place movie first?
Third place for me would be Rushmore at the bottom of the list.
Rivers, your third place movie first.
Third place, Life Aquatic.
Yeah, I think Life Aquatic is actually my third as well. Nathan, your 2?
My 2 would be Life Aquatic would be 2 for me.
Oh, okay.
Rushmore.
Rushmore for me.
Does that mean we're all number 1 is Grand Budapest?
Looks like we've got
It's
a
so
clean
much fun.
sweep with
It's
Grand
hilarious.
Budapest.
It's
I
fun.
kind of want to watch it again today. That's how good that movie
The
is.
soundtrack. Isn't the soundtrack phenomenal?
Like,
I
Tilda
love this
Swinton
soundtrack.
she can really do anything.
Tilda
Let's
Swinton?
be real. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I
But
had no
she's
idea that was Tilda Swinton.
But she
Yeah.
is a great old lady.
Yeah, because she's not that old. Right? Like that's a
Talk
No,
about someone.
no.
No,
she's
that's
not.
Talk
solid.
about
No.
someone who is androgynous. She does androgynous
Oh,
well.
yeah.
She does it
yes.
well.
The crazy thing about this is, it's to your point, Nathan, it is so ambitious and there's so much going on.
So many
that
characters.
Just looking at this poster, I feel like I could talk about this movie for 2-3 hours and we barely even scratch the surface.
know.
So
One joke that I love that every time I see it gets me is whenever he goes into the museum closes in 15 minutes. Willem Dafoe walks into the museum closes in 14 minutes. And
did
it's one
like
of the,
that.
you have to change it yourself.
Dude,
So-
that's
so-
so weird that you mentioned that, because I found myself thinking, do you think every day they okay, so the person goes in there and they put 10 numbers on each one and then they go minute by minute and take it off?
must
Like,
have
is
been
that
what
how
they were
it
doing.
used to work back in the
that
day?
was random, but that gets a huge laugh out of me every
Oh,
time.
what about Lobby Boy's drawn on mustache and how adorable that is?
That was
See,
very
that's what I'm saying. We didn't even talk
I
about
know.
Zero
Oh.
barely. And the act, he's excellent. And the love story with Zero, it's great. There's so much to unpack in Grand Budapest, and it does speak to the layered nature.
So now that you've
the
seen
film.
these 3, are you trying to jump in the deep end with Wes Anderson here?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I knew I was going to be partial to Wes Anderson because, like I said, Fantastic Mr. Fox probably is my favorite animated movie of all time. I think I saw that movie back in college like 5 or 6 times within the first week that I watched it. I kept watching it
It's
again.
fun.
If you had to choose a favorite, which one would you choose of all of them? Like all Wes Anderson movies?
Probably.
Can't pick between your children.
Probably.
you can.
I would
I
probably
can
go
for
with
sure.
Grand Budapest. Probably between Grand Budapest or Royal Tenenbaums. It's probably going to depend on my mood.
Yeah,
about you?
mine's Royal Tenenbaums for sure. I love the dynamic between Richie and Margot.
Yeah, if you've seen it and you know Richie's story, that as far as how strong he's able to be with emotions, his emotional backbone
Luke Wilson
gets
is
strong
excellent
in that movie.
that movie.
I got to watch Steve Zissou again. And I want to learn about who the true life man is who inspired the story of Grand Budapest
It's
Hotel.
fun
'Cause,
research.
we didn't even talk about very sad end in Grand Budapest. And I think it's effective. It shows that right when you think they've won the war and the Nazis still in the end just end up kind of taking over everything. All right, that is episode 9 of Real Friends. A massive thank you to everyone who watches.
Watch
shares.
Isle of Dogs in 2 months. In theaters.
Isle of Dogs coming up. Cannot wait. I can't wait to explore the west of the Wes Anderson catalog. Get it? What I did there?
Yeah, kind of. We have a we already have our
in the show on.
we already have our theme. We don't have our movies, but we have our
that's right.
theme.
Oh yeah, what is it?
Sci-fi?
Okay, but
sci-fi movies not in space.
Yes,
so we're gonna
sci-fi movies
very
specifically
specific.
not in space. Which, for an example, I don't think this is on the list, but like kind of like a Children of Men type of deal. You know, whatever. Anything that's kind of out there, but down here. Big thank you to Rivers Hughey. Tomorrow, big thank you to Nathan Velasquez, and as always, big thank you to Joe Rodriguez behind the glass, producer, Toro Man, making the magic happen. This was Real Friends. I hope you had an excellent time. We'll be back with episode 10 in a couple of weeks.
Bye.
Good day.